about fears. Let's talk about love. Yeah, I got fears, but I ain't got no love.
Okay, so today I wanted to jump on here and discuss again the Donna Emmel case because I received additional information. So, first off, it's okay to be wrong. And I discussed this in the last video. But I have to admit because of this additional information that I received, I believe my whole first criminal assessment on the Donna Emmel case is completely wrong. So, why do I believe it's wrong? And what additional information came to me that makes me believe this? The autopsy report. I did not have that autopsy report when I first theorized that Donna walked down that trail, which I now know only takes a few minutes to walk. It's not as long as it looks on the trail or on the map. And she was followed by a guy. Remember the younger brother who was 10 years old at the time, I believe, said he saw that. And to me, I mean, that, and then it's a no-brainer. She wasn't moved. Less additional information came forward. Well, additional information about her being moved didn't come forward. I didn't see that. But in the autopsy, there were a few things that I did see that made me change my assessment completely. And again, this is a very teachable moment that we can learn from. It's the small details. I can't emphasize that enough. Details that have to be interpreted in order to make correct theories. So, I'd previously stated that more than likely this was a sexually motivated crime, even though she was not sexually assaulted. Remember that? Because of various reasons. But her not being sexually assaulted and strangled just led me to believe that this was more than likely still a sexually motivated crime, even though, he could have been impotent, could have been a fantasy-driven homicide, whatever it was, and specifically because the guy that followed her, who's never showed up. Well, the autopsy reports cleared some things up for me. One was that what she was wearing. In particular, she had a red bandana tied loosely around her left ankle. So, I got contacted. I was in contact with the family, but I was contacted by somebody that lived next to Donna on Easy Street, who actually observed Donna's body in this ditch. She had made mention of this red bandana. She thought that it was laid across her ankles, but she said it certainly could have been tied. Well, the medical examiner, when they did the autopsy, said it was tied. The neighbor who found the body or observed the body in the ditch said that it's a regular bandana, was like kind of rolled. It wasn't out flat. It was kind of rolled up as if it could have been used to strangle her, is in her words. That bandana for me did something. It was key. Now, that alone doesn't bring it together for me. When they did the autopsy, they found something, and it was to my surprise. They found a needle puncture on her body. Now, before people jog off to crazy land and think that some killer was chasing her down and injected her, like the stuff we see on television, no. This area where the puncture wound was found is called the right antecubital fossa. Now, who knows what that is? Well, I didn't. I didn't go to medical school, but it's right here. Now, that needle wound obviously was not, you couldn't see it with the naked eye without any help. They used I believe it's benzene solution when they wash the body, and it reacts with blood or traces of blood that may not be seen with the human eye. It showed 4 light blood areas where this needle puncture wound was, which means it was fresh. It had just happened. Now, we certainly don't know whether it was from her killer, because she was certainly strangled manually with the hands. Okay? What really tips that off is when you see bruising in autopsy underneath the chin area. You're certainly going to see it in the straps of the muscles, and here her larynx was crushed, but the cartilage around the larynx. But when you have bruising up near your jawline, a lot of times you can ascertain and know that it was from manual strangulation. So she was certainly strangled. But that needle mark, it raises the mystery level 100 times, right? Wrong. Because what that does, it narrows your suspect pool. Now, let me explain how and why. I reached back out to family members specifically about this red bandana and why it hers, number one. Yes. This was with 1975. Girls wore bandanas. They still do. But I think in 1975 it was more prevalent. And they agreed. Yes, she wore that all the time on her head. Well, how does it get tied around her ankle? If she's in a struggle and she's getting strangled and it comes off, which it very well would or could, it doesn't miraculously go around her ankle and tie itself. Now, before again you go to crazy land and think that it's a signature by a serial killer, which, hey, on its own could possibly be. Remember, it was tied loosely. Okay? Alone, yes, maybe you could think something like that. But now, what other tangible, direct, physical evidence do we have that we can couple with that bandana? Think about everything that we found. Think about the body. And it's the needle mark and the location of that needle mark. Now, as some of you may or may not know, I worked 10 years undercover for a police department, for a district attorney's office, and for the FBI. I have been certified in Pennsylvania state and federal court system as an expert on narcotics activity. I can say almost unequivocally, there's always that 1%, that red bandana was used as a tourniquet before shooting drugs with a needle into the arm, that location. I mean, you don't want to automatically jump to that, okay? You have a needle wound. Okay, let's see if she was at the doctor's recently, you know? But with the blood being found there, and it wasn't, it took a solution to find that blood, so it wasn't evident. It was fresh. Hours before her death. Minutes before her death. Okay? I've seen this hundreds of times. And I specifically remember at least one occasion where an actual bandana was used for tying off. Now, for you guys that don't know, what do you do when you go to give blood? When they put that rubber band around your arm, it cuts off, it restricts the blood flow, so your veins become more visible and they can see it and they inject it. It's the same thing. You don't have to use a rubber band. You use anything. I've seen people use belts, string, socks. In this case, it was her bandana that she tied off with, I believe, and shot up. And then she takes it, and instead of, because now it's wound, it's folded. So instead of unfolding it and putting it back on the head, she just ties it to her leg, to her ankle. She could have easily stuffed it in her pocket, but she was wearing shorts. I don't even know if those shorts had pockets. Remember, it was, I believe, July. It might have been June. But it was summer. She was wearing a blue t-shirt, purple shorts, no bra, no socks, and shoes. On her body, if she is shooting up heroin, or if somebody else shot her up, what could she use to tie off? There's nothing. She has no socks. I guess maybe a string depending on the type of shoe she had. But the most easily accessible thing would be her bandana. Now, does that tell us anything? Well, it certainly doesn't tell us who killed her. She didn't die of an overdose, right? The autopsy would have caught that. What also the autopsy didn't catch is what drug she shot up. The autopsy checked the blood for morphine, which would include the opiate of heroin, negative. Barbiturates, no. Medical compounds, and I believe they called it base organic, no, negative. So what could she have shot up with? Well, it still could have been heroin. Heroin wouldn't have metabolized, I don't believe, that quickly to be found. It showed that she was not a chronic user of heroin. But it could have been her very first time. But maybe it wasn't heroin. 1975. Quaaludes were a big thing. Now, I'm not sure how that metabolizes in the blood, and if that chemical compound would have been found in 1975. You have PCP. You have meth, even though I don't believe that was that big in 1975. But it was something. Okay? It was the needle wound here tells you if it was an offender who was chasing her, trying to inject her, it would be on her back, on her butt, in her leg. Not exactly where people shoot up at. I mean, I know they shoot up other places, but this is the main area. Especially for first-time users, which she probably was. Now, what got her to that point, I don't know. I've been asked, could she have been forced to like shoot up? Sure. Anything is possible. She has no history that I know of drug use other than possible marijuana, which is pretty prevalent, but you're not shooting up marijuana. So what was it? And why did she do it? We might not ever know. But you cannot look away and ignore the fact that she has a needle mark right here and her bandana is now tied around her ankle. Those two things. Now, sure, it's an assumption, but it's an assumption based on logical thoughts. Let me ask you, is that more logical? She shoots up, most likely with the help of somebody. She uses her bandana, which is now, she normally wore up here. It's now around her ankle and it's rolled up. Is that more logical? Or the guy that followed her in this path was a serial killer and rapist. And he found her and he shot her up full of something that didn't show up on the drug test. So it must have either not metabolized or was so small of an amount that it didn't show. And then removed her bandana from her head, folded it, and then tied it around her ankle as a signature. Just like I know that, or based off of what I saw, her body being moved and brought back to that location, killed somewhere else, remember that? As much as I'm sure that didn't happen, I'm sure that this scenario of a serial killer didn't happen either. So how does this sequence of events and this new details that came forth, how does that change the assessment? Well, again, I just told you, it's not a sexually motivated, could still be a sexually motivated crime, but not by a serial offender. What we're looking for now, and this is the beauty of details, you're looking for somebody she knew and she was comfortable with, without a doubt. That she trusted. Now, and this person had a drug history. And she trusted him to shoot her up. That's the only way I see it. It's the needle mark and it's the bandana that changes everything. The whole assessment that I had done previously before I had that knowledge. Again, it's so important as to why you need everything. We were looking for a totally different offender based off of the information that I had a couple days ago. New information comes in and you got to correct it, right? And that was important for me to do this video. And I specifically asked the family for permission to do that because it's important. I don't want misinformation out there, right? And I told them, if you don't give me permission to explain everything, the new details that came in, I will delete that previous video because it's false. I mean, I guess it's not false. It's based on the information I had at the time. But I don't want people looking, for example, let's say there was somebody on Easy Street 50 years later. Today, they're like, Oh, I was going to call or email Detective Ken Maines and tell him that my druggy neighbor should be looked at as a suspect. But now they're looking for, he says it's a serial rapist stranger. I'm not going to do it. And here all along, that's who we're looking for, is a druggie or somebody that was doing drugs. Now, I find it very coincidental that two different people had told me that path was known for drug use. And drugs were allegedly kept in that very ditch where Donna was found. That makes me give pause. Listen, you can't dispute the evidence, which is that needle mark. What is that? With that bandana being rolled up, it has to be. Now, why is she killed? She didn't overdose. Again, we discussed that. But maybe she freaked out. Maybe there was some sort of altercation, or maybe the guy thought, listen, I will do these drugs, and in his mind, she's going to allow me to have sex with her. She fights, whatever it is, and he strangles her. Now, I also entertained the possibility, and I entertained this in the first video, but I didn't bring it up, was the possibility that something happened within her home. You know, the mom called. Why did she call? Time to come home. Well, was she in trouble? And remember, I made a big deal about the younger brother still being allowed to be there, but she had to go home. Did she make it home? Was there conflict? Remember, anytime you have a murder, you want to look at where there is conflict. And with there being no sexual assault, okay, we got to look at anger, at conflict. Dad, mom, brother. You have to look at that. You still kind of have to do it here, you know, but listen. The police officers, investigators on the scene that interviewed the mom, dad, brothers, they would have a good indication as to whether they should be looking there or not. Like Patsy Ramsey and John Ramsey. They threw off red flag after red flag within that initial, 12 hours. Did this family. You don't want to blame the family, but you got to look at, it's just the way an investigation is. Now, if she was sexually assaulted, well, okay, you're not really going to be looking at the family as much. But when there is none, and she gets that phone call home, you got to look. Now, I understand that the mom had taken several polygraphs and passed them. Now, her passing them doesn't do anything for me. Just like if she failed them, wouldn't do anything for me because I don't believe in them. But for the police to give her polygraphs in the first place means to me either they were doing it to everybody or there was a reason that they gave it to her. Could it be she came home messed up from the drugs? And her mom, her and dad, her and brother, somebody got into a fight and killed her? Not likely. I mean, yeah, they get in a fight, but to the point where they strangle her to death and get rid of the body? It's a little bit far-fetched for me, but I'll entertain it. But think of teenagers. Who do they always hang out with? Not their mom and dad, their friends. Donna's 15. Maybe the guy that followed her in there was a friend of hers and not a stranger. Maybe it was her boyfriend. They caught up to her. Let's do some drugs before you get home. I know you've never done it before, but trust me, this is going to be great. Man, doing a needle for your first time, I mean, that's got to be hard. It's got to be, but I don't know her. I don't know her victimology as well. I don't know. I don't know what she would do. But apparently, she did it. She did it. This is a conscious effort to do this to yourself. This is nobody forcing you. Physically, mentally, peer pressure wise, for sure that could have happened. She could have had the tourniquet on and somebody else shot her up. Absolutely. But does that matter? No, because she didn't die of an overdose. But I'm sure that whether she shot herself up or the guy that did it, and I'm going to say it was a guy, more than likely is the person that strangled her. She's not strangling herself. Somebody had to do it. Now, could it be that it's completely unrelated? Could this have happened previously at Grice's? Why she's over there? Absolutely. Absolutely it could have. So then you have a different scenario, right? Where you have two kind of like unfortunate events happening at the same time. Let's say at 6 o'clock at night, she goes over to the dunes, which has the sand, and shoots up heroin or any drug. I don't know. You just shoot up cocaine, PCP, like I said, Quaaludes, whatever it is. She shot up with something. Unless there's evidence that she went to a doctor, and that's not annotated anywhere. So you have to go with the assumption again, and because of the red bandana. I would be curious to know, and I didn't read this anywhere, and this would tell you right here. When her brother saw her walking into that path, did she have on the red bandana? So she could have shot up earlier and been attacked by a complete stranger. Yes, that certainly could happen. So again, then the first video that I did may or may not be relevant. It all would depend on where that bandana was when she walked into those woods. Right? That's the way I see it. Small details. It's always in the small details. This is a case that information keeps coming in. And if I keep getting information and I see something that changes something, I'm going to jump on here and I'm going to let you know. Because it's important to do that. This isn't starting to get into be an intriguing case for me. Even if that heroin, even if it wasn't heroin, I just assume heroin when I think of people shooting up. The police had to have started interviewing people because of that. They saw it just like I did on the autopsy report. Hey, needle wound. Oh, we need to check this out. Did the boyfriend, was he known to use heroin or inject some type of drug? I mean, that narrows your suspect pool significantly. Now, again, you might run into a dead end, okay? Let's say you notice a needle wound and you're like, oh, okay, well, good. For a detective, that's a lead to follow up on. Let's go start Easy Street. Listen, you interview 3 or 4 people, you're going to know who the druggies are. You're going to know where to find them. Then you go and interview them. They might not talk to you. That's fine. You got their names. So now you have a list of 10 people on Easy Street or in the surrounding area, but the offender, if it was this person, came from that area. You start working alibis and crossing off who isn't there, your suspects are going to show themselves. I'm sure that's what police did. And they probably ran into a dead end there for some way. And maybe it's because, okay, maybe they knew. Maybe they found somebody who said, yes, I did heroin with Donna. It was her first time that night. We did it over at Grice's, and she went home. And they checked out and said, oh, yeah, well, she was seen after that by her brother walking into those woods. Well, if that's the case, then the first video scenario could possibly make sense. But I still believe, because of the timeline, mom calls at 8, or 8:30, she leaves, but she never makes it. I hate to say a gut instinct, because I don't always believe in that. I believe in evidence. Just like that needle wound. That's evidence to me. The bandana rolled up. That's evidence to me. Just feel that is playing a role in Donna's death. She, again, wasn't a chronic user. The autopsy showed that. So you're just going to tell me that, and listen to this. It's just her lucky, her lucky night, right? She's going to try heroin for the first time and then get strangled. I had a murder case once where the victim was sexually assaulted and raped and killed. The DNA came back to a boyfriend, but the boyfriend said, hey, I had sex with her, but it was a week ago. And I'm like, really? How's your DNA inside her? Enough so that when the medical examiner swabbed her, it was visible. I'm like, that doesn't make sense, buddy. Come on. I'm not believing it. So when I was talking to the district attorney about arresting the individual, he how district attorneys are. They go through different scenarios, and he's like, well, we could get him on the sexual assault. We have physical evidence there, but we have nothing to tie him to the murder. And I remember saying, oh, it was just her lucky day, right? She gets raped, and then somebody else differently comes in and kills her. Just like this. The person that is with her, giving her the heroin or drug or whatever it was. And listen, it may not even be that. It could be that she did it on her own. Okay? Plastic bag hid somewhere with needle and drug in it on that path, that ditch. And before she gets home, she decides to sit down on a rock, tie it off, shoot up because she doesn't want to deal with her mom because she's in trouble or something. I mean, these are great assumptions, and I'll give you that. But then what? She takes it off and looks, and there's that stranger who is observed walking behind her by her brother, and he just starts strangling and kill her. I don't know. I'm not sure I believe in that. I think it would be more likely she's with somebody. Her friends. Remember how teenagers are. And then some sort of altercation happened between the two. I'm gonna tell somebody that you are hiding drugs here, or I don't know. There's 100 different scenarios. That's the new information that came in, and that, I believe, changes the assessment in this case. Who knows? Maybe 2 days later from now, new information will come in, and I'll have to readjust the assessment, and that's okay. These people that get tunnel vision and they won't come away from their assessment or their suspects, they have problems. That's an issue in investigations. You must be willing to adapt and say, okay, that doesn't make sense. Because of this new information, needle mark, this is now what I think is making more sense. There's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't make you less smart. That doesn't make you, a bandwagon jumper. Remember, this ain't an entertainment. This is somebody's life that was affected. And remember the ripple effects that happened because of this. It's not just Donna. It's not just Donna's family. There's friends, the person that found the body, traumatized for life. So, and then the people that carry the burden after that. So it's okay to change things as long as we get it right. That's the goal. Deduce possibilities. Yes, it's possible that a stranger came and did this. But maybe it's more probable that it's somebody that she knows and is a drug user because of X, Y, and Z. That's it. That's the update. Thanks for watching. Main's out.
Yeah.